The numbers don't lie. Young people are in the majority in Africa, and yet their participation in political processes remains low. Afrobarometer conducted a survey in 2014 and found nearly 80% of people over the age of 35 tend to go and vote, compared to just 68% of youth.
Part of what we found was that in general, youth participate at lower levels in terms of pre-election engagement. Also in some cases, even when in terms of voting, but about 68% actually said that they actually do vote, or they had voted in the last national election. But what was really striking is what we'd call engagement. Engagement as in, do you attend community meetings, do you attend campaign rallies, do you actually go to community leaders and actually say, hey, I've got this idea, or I'm thinking this way about something. And one of the things we noticed is that at very low levels of youth actually engaging at that level. I mean, about 8% said they actually worked for a party or a candidate in the last national election, in Southern Africa at least. And another major thing that comes out is that young women actually participate at far lower levels than their male counterparts.
The women's movement has made great strides in enhancing the participation of women. As you can see across the continent, we are getting more and more women who are actually contesting for elections and who are actually holding seats in Parliament and in Senate. But I think there's a gap, because we talk of women statistics, but we don't actually interrogate how many young women are also included in those statistics. So I think there is need for mechanisms to ensure that there are succession plans, that women are able to hand over the baton stick to the next generation, so that the work that has been done in the past continues. There is need for capacity building. There is need for mentorship. Mentorship is critical, because when you walk with someone who has walked that road, it helps, because being in politics as a woman is actually more difficult than being in politics as a man. There is hate speech, there is abuse. The male electoral contestants tend to attack women's sexuality when they feel like competition is heightening. So there is a need for young women to be taught how to rise above those sexual innuendos, so that they keep the discussion focused to issue-based politics. This is what a woman can do. This is what a woman will deliver.
While research done in East Africa found young people coming up with innovative ways to engage in the political process.
Whilst youth are disengaged and disenchanted with the politics, it doesn't necessarily mean they're disinterested. It just means that they're deviating away from the mainstream because of the way the situation, the current political environment is. And when they're moving to the mainstream, they're now beginning to create their own spaces using formal and informal rules to be able to still engage in the political process. One of the things that I found out in my research in particular was the way the young people are beginning to use social media to be able to articulate their issues, be able to demand for inclusive politics, and be able to realize the political outcomes.
ICTs are very essential in electoral processes because they primarily promote transparency, and so it is very easy to connect with the young people when you're using the ICTs. But most importantly, as we see that there's been a huge gap of mistrust between institutions and the people that they lead. And I think that technology offers an avenue to be able to build, to make the gap very small and build trust between institutions and young people.
Trust is a key factor in the electoral process, and the low levels of youth engagement has contributed to the perception of young people as troublemakers. They're often used as instruments for electoral violence, either as instigators or perpetrators. Repressive governmental laws further contribute to the alienation from the political process.
What we're seeing currently right now that is causing more of a shrinkage of civil society space or space that young people can utilize to effectively participate within the electoral space is caused by, one, the rise of suppressive laws that we are starting to see emerging in a lot of countries in our continent. These laws serve to rather limit or block the setting up of political parties, the setting up of civil society, and even limit the freedoms that people are actually entitled to, such as freedom of association, freedom of movement, and even political affiliation. So these, in a way, have been restricting the space for young people to participate. And also another issue that is contributing is also resources. Priorities are changing for donors, for funders, for even potential investors. And as those priorities change, also resources become a bit more restricted. So access to be able to tap into the resources is becoming more and more limited, and people are sort of moving away from the electoral process or civil society activism and trying focusing on the more predominant issues such as health, education, to name but a few.
And that's where social and online movements like Siasa Place comes in. Based in Kenya, it's a hub aimed at mainstreaming the youth into politics.
So Siasa Place is a platform where we engage youth on the Constitution. We break it down because we found out that youth disengage. So what we do is allow them to learn about the Constitution using mediums that they use a lot, from Facebook to Twitter.
But it's not just restricted to cyberspace.
A lot of times what we do is encourage them to continue using different avenues. It might not always be on social media. We tell them to get offline. We call them keyboard warriors. When Kenyans are upset, we go to our keyboards, we go to Twitter, and we're very loud and vocal. But how can we transfer that energy to ground movement? So we talk about strategy, we talk about mobilization, and who do you focus on? It's your member of county assembly, your MCA, who should be reachable.
We need to foster better collaborations as organizations. Now, resources may be limited in one way or the other, but you'll find that if we're able to group our networks together and actually form bigger collaborations, we may be able to tap into the limited resources that actually exist.
It's why conversations and consultations like these are critical. They provide a space for young people to contribute to the discourse of building a culture of democracy on the continent and tap into different networks. But more importantly,
making it engaging and fun, sexifying politics.